All right, here's a quick rundown of the composite part of the project. So this is for an 86 Hood MR2, and as a result of some of the duct work that I've got going on in the front, I decided it was best to have a composite hood and kind of relocate all the reinforcement points, especially considering I've got hood pins in a different location, so lots of new reinforcements relative to the factory hood. So, pardon the mess, been a bit of a project, but got a vacuum pump. It's Robin Air, what is it? It's a 15500 unit. Seems to work pretty good. It goes down to a kind of resin catch can, and I've been just feeding that straight into some 1/2 inch tube, and this is running into it's kind of like a Gore-Tex, or I don't know, some sort of sleeve that allows air to pass through or vacuum to pass through, but once resin hits the fabric membrane, it kind of blocks the pores, so it stops resin flow, and that's actually been quite helpful for this type of infusion project for me, because I don't have to be quite as careful with the, I guess, layout of the resin flow. So I'll just kind of run that down. So we've got the feed line that comes in through here, and let's just say, since I've got one vacuum source at the edge here, if this just fed all the resin and it hit here and proceeded to, evacuate the resin out, I'd be worried about everything else around being pretty dry, and this stops that from happening. So it stops the resin flow, or stops the vacuum flow once that gets saturated. So it's been a good tool. First time using it, and it's been pretty successful. I've been using the tack tape here to kind of keep it down. Yeah, so I've got a nylon peel ply on here. Not the cleanest install, and you've probably noticed at this point in time, I really don't have hardly any pleats on this vacuum bag. Probably should, and I candidly would recommend a different vacuum bag. This is from Fiberglass, and not that impressed with it. It is rated for epoxy, but yeah, just not ideal. So a couple areas that looked like they lifted up before it got fully cured, so I'll see how that pencils out. But the cut line's over here. Worst case scenario, I have to do a patch. This would be under the reinforcement, so not worried about that. The mesh media, I think there's better solutions out there, or maybe the solution here is, if you're doing this with the mesh media, do peel ply on the top, and that'll prevent the vacuum bag from kind of conforming into all the little valleys and halting flow. So if I were to do this again, may try that, since I still have a little bit of that left. Spiral tubing just held down at either end with some of that gum tape. 3D printed little inlet lines to make this thing work. One of the things that I had challenges with, of course, happens to be the end of the vacuum source over here. Kind of a 5-minute interval, you see lines here. So every 5 minutes I kind of watch the progress, and candidly right here the part was getting really, well, it was dry up until the end. So what I ended up doing was I got a Ziploc bag, and I filled it with the hottest tap water I could get, and I just set the bag on the top of this, and that allowed this to finish up very quickly. So I think that was actually a nice find, because candidly, if this got dry at the end here, that would have been less than desirable to have a partially infused part, especially for the top. Not that I'm worried about cosmetics, but still. So lots of reinforcements on this with regards to the profiles, the Sonocore mat in the center, and also over on the leading edge here. We'll see how this all pencils out. So probably tomorrow I'll take it out of the mold. But for the time being, I just have a little space heater. It's set on low, and it's keeping the temperature in the mid-70s for the part. So that should be good enough for curing, especially with a bit of time. Here is the mold from the under structure. I actually have part of the original kind of cut out here. So there was a Duracoat epoxy tooling gel that I used to apply on the top of this. The reason why I ended up doing that over the normal orange gel coat, you can see here, I've got a clay below this, and I was changing the profiles all the way around the part, smoothing out a lot of the geometry, but a lot of the channels here off to the side, I've basically, I guess, totally re-engineered the profile of this. So as the hood closes, this valley is what seals kind of that space. So there's kind of a rubber gasket that will effectively sit against this. And that goes all the way around the part. So this is just a single 200 gram layer of, I think this fabric's called the Rook pattern. And I did cut this when it was dry just to make sure that I can get the fabric to kind of conform, especially in the deep valleys, fore and aft. So it worked pretty good. Of course, when I pulled the part out, I wasn't really careful, so all the work that I was doing to keep this profile, I guess, refined, got destroyed. So I'll have the hood pins come here, and I've got one on the other side. So this will be kind of the area for the quick latch mechanism to sit. So a lot of the reinforcements on the top of this, kind of the underside, there's a lot of loading going through there. So yeah, I think it's coming together. And again, a lot of the profiles were shaped with clay, and I put the Duracoat epoxy on the top. I was hoping I could get maybe 2 parts out of it before it would break, but not much of a draft angle on that, so single use part. And if I were to make another mold, so be it. Probably best just to do another mold if I were to do the skin. That's all right. So here is the structure. A lot of this upper section is getting cut out. You can see areas where the Duracoat kind of epoxy gel coat was still here, including some of the clay that was attached to it. A couple dry spots. So for context, this infusion was a partial infusion on the first try. So when I did this upper stretch here had all the resin pretty much flow and pool up. And I couldn't get beyond really kind of around here. I got some of the channels where they got infused, but virtually everything else was bone dry. So I did an attempt to salvage the part. Again, I was pretty worried about destroying the mold. So what I ended up doing was, with the vacuum bag of the first resin infusion removed, went ahead, threw a new bag on, a different layup for the flow media and the vacuum lines and feed line, and I sent it again. And the next one actually worked pretty good. I have not really been able to see where one infusion stopped and the second kind of met to it, so nor have I been able to feel any sort of difference in the strength of the parts. I mean, it feels pretty strong for what it is. Again, this top part's all getting kind of cut out, so I'm not really worried about strength in this part. But, it's not perfect. I got the PVA that's kind of coming off here, so that nothing to worry about there. Water will remove that. Some of the sharp geometries I think turned out okay. I have a little bit of work to do just to touch things up. This is areas where it looks like there's some bridging involved. Again, a lot of complex geometry in a small area, but it's all workable. I'm not as worried about the cosmetics on this part, so I'll probably end up getting this part painted. Just clean it up a little bit, rattle can it, and I'll bond it to the underside of the hood. Let's see if I can do this one-handed here. So this whole structure probably weighs maybe a pound or 2 pounds. So it goes something like that. Because the hood pins are over here, and I've got a leading edge up at the front, in order to keep that part rigid, I'm going to 3D print a piece, and it'll look like a little wedge. I'll have the opening here. That way the hood catch, or the hood pins will actually stay here. But that part will essentially come forward and taper in, and I'll lay some composite over that part. And then it's probably just going to be a 3D printed mold. I'll get the composite piece, and I'll bond that over this. And I'll do the same thing over here, just, again, giving it some strength. So this is my first large, resin infusion project. Underside was, again, the challenge with a failed infusion, but so far so good. The top skin is much better. I think once everything is removed, rough trimmed, and a little bit of sanding and some finish work, I think I'll be ready to start bonding these things in. So yeah, overall fairly happy with this. I really didn't think this understructure would be salvageable. Lots of controversy if that would be possible to save. But again, I mean, it looks good to me. Certainly good enough to actually send it and see how this thing does. So there you have it.